Hi everyone! This week I have delved into the frozen desserts chapter of the book, which is probably the one chapter that is not in my comfort zone, but I'm willing to try everything in this book. This particular recipe, called frozen chocolate, is like a frozen hot chocolate. It is reminiscent of the ice milk product that was phased out in the early 1990s. In favor of now these ultra super premium high fat ice creams that are so popular now. I make my own baker's chocolate, which is what this uses. It's only got 4 ingredients in this recipe, so every ingredient needs to be really good. And because it's made with milk instead of cream, your taste buds are not going to be coated with fat, so you're really going to be tasting that chocolate. And I use some black cocoa powder in my chocolate squares to deepen the taste. Black cocoa powder is what makes Oreos taste like Oreos, and it's not 100% black cocoa powder because that's much too strong and it would be unpleasant, but it's mixed with regular cocoa powder to intensify the chocolate taste. For baking, I use half and half of the 2 cocoa powders, but for drinks like your smoothies, if you like to put cocoa powder in there, hot chocolate, any kind of cold drink, I would suggest 1 part black cocoa powder to 3 parts of regular cocoa powder. And honestly, it's got such a nice flavor, it really doesn't even need much, if any, sugar in it. So this recipe is baker's chocolate, rich milk, which is full fat milk, and I added a little bit of half and half to make sure the fat content was as rich as possible without being overly fatty. Just a pinch of salt and some water. Make sure I'm not forgetting anything. So, yeah, that's all. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've got 1 pan there that you see on the left. That will be to scald the milk, and you always want to scald the milk when the recipe says to do so because that does change the protein structure of the milk. And I've got a little bit of half and half in there, and then equaling enough to make 3 cups total of milk. And then over some boiling water, I'm melting the chocolate squares. And I've tried different black cocos, and they're not all the same. The Hershey's Dark is not particularly good compared to some of the better brands, and I'll link you the ones, or at least one of them that I like, in the description. And of course the recipe will be in the description as well. But let's see my experience making this, because it was really something. Now, ice cream makers, however, in the beginning of the book, she's got a whole page and a half on how to make ice cream with the rock salt and ice and a churn, which I'm going to mimic that a bit in the kitchen. So I've added half of the sugar to the melted chocolate, and I'm just checking my scalded milk to make sure that it's between 180 and 185 degrees. And you can tell when the milk starts to bubble like this, but I always use my thermometer for everything just to be sure. So once that sugar's been in there for about a minute and it's dissolved, I add a cup of boiling water. And that has to cook for another minute. Then I'm going to combine that mixture with the milk and the remaining half cup of sugar. And I'm going to give it a taste to make sure it is delicious. And the next thing is to cool it down. And I was hoping to get this done in 24 hours, but that did not turn out to be the case. So in my efforts to cool this down quickly, I put it over an ice bath. And I have my beaters ready to go because I am going to use them to break up the ice crystals multiple times during the freezing process. I left it out on the counter. And I've got the ice cream salt. I don't know if that's going to help, but I'm going to do it the way she says to do in the book. I used to have an ice cream machine. I think I used it maybe 3 times when I was a private chef. I would create custom ice creams to go with themed meals. If I couldn't come up with a really interesting baked dessert, I would have a ice cream that complemented the theme of the evening, like an Asian night, or we would do Cinco de Mayo. So I've done cinnamon ice cream. Asian, I did yuzu ice cream. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But I'm not a huge ice cream eater. That's not my sweet of choice. That's why I'm not very experienced with frozen desserts. So I've had it in the fridge and it's cooled down now enough to put it in a container to go in the freezer. I think one of the problems I ran into is plastic does not conduct cold well at all. But considering the amount of freezer space I have and the containers that will fit in that space, this is what I can do. We have to, do the best we can with what we have. My freezer is always full. I keep it well stocked. So I had to go in the door. And the thing that was perplexing me is my ice cube tray is also in the door and it freezes in about 90 minutes. My ice cubes are ready, but in this plastic, and I realize, of course, this is a much larger amount than an ice cube, but it took about 12 hours to get slushy like this. So this is my first breaking up the ice crystals attempt with the mixer, and I'm going to do it on low initially. If I try to incorporate any air at this point, it's not going to stay because there's no fat to hold the air bubbles, and it's not cold enough to suspend the air. But I also don't want those crystals turning this into a block of chocolate, a chocolate ice cube. That's not what anyone signed up for, I don't think. So it's like a slushie right now, and I'm just making sure there's no extra crystals stuck to the edge anywhere. And when I check the temperature, it's still right about 32, and ice cream really should be 0 degrees. So here I am this is the next morning, and you see it's still not frozen. At this point it was 28 degrees, but considerably firmer than the day before. And I'm going to go a little bit higher with the speed now, 3 or 4, and this mixer goes up to a 10. And you see it's kind of staying together as a mass, it's not splashing, so that's progress. This is my 4th time introducing more air into this and breaking up the crystals. I'm going to beat it pretty vigorously this time, and I'm going to do it over ice because it is getting close to being frozen. This is turning into a 24-hour process, but I want a good result. With my ice, I'll do a little bit of ice cream salt. pull in. And then also I have a different container because this is going to expand. And I have this 2-compartment container. It'll freeze a little bit more quickly, so it'll be done today, I think, doing that. I'll show you where it's at now. Kind of soft, but it hasn't been splashing the last few times, or however many times I've done this for. So the other 3 times it stays together, almost like a pudding. But there's quite a bit of ice crystals in here, as you can imagine. I'm really gonna give it a good, maybe on a 7 speed. Let's see. And now it's frozen overnight, and it's not completely hard. It's kind of a firm slushy, but I'm happy with it. So I'm serving it by making little mini ice cream scoops. And I used Cool Whip for this because the point of this is to be light and clean tasting, and a heavy whipped cream that would coat my tongue would diminish the rich chocolate flavor I worked so hard to achieve. And this really is good. It's refreshing, it's clean, it's chocolatey. I would make this again, even with all that work.